how do we form a collaborative ethos with other church leaders? That's the topic that we want to talk about in this module. And this is so critical because it deals with the relational side of the church planting network. And relationships will determine everything. The level or the size of your relationship will determine the size of your vision. It will determine what you actually accomplish. So how do you have big relationships with each other? That's what we're going to talk about today. What's your first impression when you hear that? What do you first think about when you hear about relationships being involved in this church planting network?
First thing I hear about is, or think about, is the old quote, "Kingdom of God is built upon relationship." Mm-hmm. And it's so true. If you think about it, there's no other organization in the world that works like the Kingdom of God. You can call a missionary friend in Haiti, and they can run over to Laganov, and they can get things moving way faster than any other organization can, simply because of relationship. It's huge. And in the Wesleyan Church, it seems like there's 2 degrees of separation instead of 6 degrees of separation. But even branching outside the Wesleyan Church, looking outside of what we're doing, the Kingdom of God is built upon relationships. And the networks that I was a part of in the South with what we were doing, everything was about relationship. And that was good because when things came to blows, and eventually things will, you're going to disagree on something. Otherwise, there's just one leader in the room. But whenever you have more than one leader in the room, you're going to have disagreement. And you have to know that you're in it to win it. You're in it together, no matter what. And you're going to work through it. You're going to speak the truth in love, but you're going to come out on the other side of that as well. And I think one of the key things that I heard when I was in that group and working with them was there's acquaintances, there's friends, and there's family. And breaking that down in ministry is you support acquaintances. As pastors, we want to support everybody that we're friends with, that we're acquaintances with, and all that stuff. But maybe you don't need to partner with them. And then there's friends that you do want to partner with them, but you don't need to build a network with them.
Right.
And then there's family, whether that's spiritual family, whether it's physical family, or whether it's people, there's something in you that says, we're just connected. There's a connection there. There's a connection with this church and that church and with what we're doing. That's who you build with. Because at the end of the day, you know that you're not going to leave each other's side. You're going to disagree on some things, but you're not going to leave each other's side. You need to be able to walk out of the room together. And only family does that. Those conversations that happen around the kitchen table, that don't happen in the dining room, they happen around the kitchen table. Those hard conversations. It's going to be some of the deepest pain that you're going to go through. You're going to want that person and those people by your side, because that's where your greatest joy is going to come from in ministry as well.
That's right. And that's such a good line that you said. Say it again.
I'll try to. So you support acquaintances, you partner with friends, but you only build with family.
You build with family. It's so critical. I think especially when it comes to when you are starting to contribute to a collective pool of, finances, when you are all chipping in and you're playing your part financially to support the church planting network and the church plants that are moving forward, you lay it all out there, and then that's when the real test comes in to play. When you bring up money, that's where the test is, right? And it takes a lot of trust, and trust is relationship, to navigate that. When you start talking about releasing your funds to be managed and decisions are being made, by somebody, and it may not be you. That's when the real test comes in, and you got to have strong relationships, high trust, humility is a huge value throughout the church planting network, being able to navigate those relationships. But there are some ways that, people, it's not just money, but people also find a way to contribute. So what are some ways that people can find a way to contribute, even if they're not the primary leader of the church planting network?
Right.
How do they contribute, and how can a leader develop those people and those different roles and to help them find a place in what they're doing in the big picture?
I'll give a few examples just from that network from Texas down to Florida that I was working with, mainly centered in Louisiana. One interesting thing with that is one of the churches in New Orleans was having trouble with the board, the pastor and the board, just they weren't agreeing on some things. And it was interesting because of the relationship that was built. Pastor had been in the pulpit in New Orleans and from our home church, and there's cross-pollination that was happening. There's some trust that was happening congregationally between each other. That pastor, the pastor I was working directly with, was able to go in and actually smooth things over between the board and the pastor. Something that could have been very divisive, a building project, could have been very divisive, was actually smoothed over and mended because of multiple anchors in that congregation's life. And the same thing happened vice versa. That pastor from New Orleans came over and really worked out an issue between our pastor and the executive pastor. And so you never know what's going to happen. You never know when you're going to need that friend that sticks closer than a brother to come in. The other thing that I've seen with that network is there's different levels of leadership and there's different giftings, whether it's the APES model, 5Q, or the spiritual gifting test in other ways. But with them, we had the guy that was like the architect. He was going to strategically plan everything, but you did not want him counseling anybody about anything in that network on that staff. And that's completely fine. And there's another guy that was just very pastoral. And so he wasn't going to lead everything, but he was very good at coming in, encouraging, pastoring, shepherding the other leaders in that organization. We had a lady that was one of the pastors that was so good at pumping everybody up and encouraging everybody and saying, we're going to take this hill and we're going to run with it. And so understanding the gifts that God's given you through the people and the leaders and not viewing them as competition, but viewing all of you as a resource.
Exactly.
What that takes is an immense amount of self-awareness and humility. And the capacity on an organization, I would say, is the self-awareness of the leader.
Absolutely. And you see that play itself out, again and again. And being able to steward people's other leaders. If I'm the church planting network leader and I'm trying to steward you and your leadership, that is the ultimate test of a leader, being able to steward another leader, and to be able to work together and to find ways that they can bring a contribution and it's valuable and it's helping and they feel like they're contributing more than just money. Because I think people in the church planting network, they want to feel like, I'll give my money, I'll give my percentage, I'll do that. But I kind of want to be more involved. And I want to be able to give my gifts. Maybe I'm coaching. I'm a great coach, so I can coach the church planters. And so that's a gift. Or even, I know one example of a fella in a network who's got multiple business degrees. And so for him, finances and stewarding, those resources is just, it's easy for him. It's natural. He can develop spreadsheets and budgets. And so he does all that work for the church planters to help them get started. And he's bringing a contribution, feels like he's really involved in their lives. And so there's a lot of that. In the end, though, every church, one of the big things that they have to do is raise up church planters. And so in this module, we're going to talk about that too. This collaboration is ultimately geared to helping every church, every leader, everyone is a recruiter. Everyone's raising up church planters from within. Is there a good example of where you've seen that play itself out, where everybody on the team is committed to raising up and sending out leaders?
I would say one, I've had a few personally, but one that I'm just thinking of just this week that I've really dug into is Hillsong. And a lot of people think about Hillsong, music, think about Brian Houston. They might think a lot of other things with Hillsong. But the youth pastor in the 90s at Hillsong was Phil Dooley. And Phil Dooley raised up United. We know about United now because they're a great band that Joel Houston kind of ran. But Phil Dooley said, I feel like there's something more in me. And it was Brian Houston who said, okay, maybe this doesn't need to be just my organization. Because some pastors will do that. Say, but I rely on you to be my youth pastor. You're my guy for youth pastor. And totally negate the larger call that might be inside of it. Phil Dooley goes to South Africa. 10 years later, they had 30,000 people at church last Sunday in South Africa. Had Brian Houston not been casting that vision to everybody, which he did, but then the other side of casting that vision is being open to releasing people that feel called into that vision and then finding a way to replace that. And that comes with trust. That comes with, again, self-awareness of, okay, I know what my gifts are. I know what my gifts are not. And I'm going to raise up people, and I'm going to be okay if God transitions them on.
That's right. And that's a big part of what we're going to unpack in this module. And hopefully in the end, you will gain clarity on what are the roles that people play, how to navigate those relationships, know what those tensions will be when they come, and then be able to build on a solid relational foundation, high trust environment.
The big thing that the pastor has to remember is that they are the main steward of the relationship. You cannot delegate the responsibility of that relationship, and that's what this module mainly focuses on.